with me and always returning to some movie that has some actor that was on the Odyssey. I mean, it's not exactly in a row because I broke that row with the Ice Cream Man, but now I'm here talking about a movie that has Anne Hathaway, who was also in the Odyssey. What's next? The next big blockbuster movie that I'm gonna watch is gonna have Matt Damon. Oh dear, what is happening? Alright, but that's just a little bit of a nitpick that I had. Considering that, I went to see a movie that I wasn't exactly anticipating, but I know someone who was absolutely anticipating because it is a big fan of dinosaurs. I love my dinosaurs too, but here we are at the end of Oak Street. In which, the funny thing about it is that I thought that this was based on a book, but no, it wasn't. Probably the biggest familiarity that I have with a title named The End of Oak Street is because it reminded me of that Twilight Zone episode. I think it was called the Monsters. The monsters live on Maple Street or something like that. So that's what it kind of reminded me. Although in this one, since the trailer really felt pretty ambitious, that they kind of showcased what it's gonna be. It's gonna be the simple premise of dinosaurs in a suburban town. That's pretty much the whole gist of it, and the biggest seller that there is. So basically, it's kind of like the feeling like a spin-off of Jurassic Park. Although now everything with dinosaurs, it always calls Jurassic Park in our mind. Although I do love my dinosaur movie. I mean, I do also like kind of my own monster movie here and there. Although it's kind of sad that dinosaurs are a little bit waning in popularity, but I mostly blame because how lame all those Jurassic World movies did, and they didn't do any favors to that, which is sad because this year I did revisit the Natural Museum, the Natural History Museum, and still the dinosaur still holds up, and there's still kids loving it, and there's something really, how can I say, interesting about them, no matter how many times you watch it. And also, it's incredible, to make comparison how we looked at that dinosaurs in the 90s and now how we watch them, considering that a lot of more discovery has been going on, more speculations, even with the whole theory that dinosaurs usually had, they came from birds. Apparently, I'm not an expert. They had feathers and there's also some hair and all this stuff. Sorry about that. This is kind of like how dinosaurs are now being portrayed in the media. So it's kind of like a interesting insight on how we look at dinosaurs here and there. But that's still, I wasn't kind of like 100% super anticipating this movie, although they did kind of showcase every single time I go to the movie and the movie theater. It really felt that they really wanted to push some kind of notoriety on this one, more subtle ways than others compared to others. But either way, since we're now kind of like the final months of the summer. Now it's time to pull up the big guns on blockbuster films. And I was planning to watch it a little bit later, but something came up that I decided that, you know what, now the day is ruined. Now I need something. You know what? Let's go watch the movie. Pick the matinee, and you know what? At the end of the day, the end of Oak Street, see what I did there? It was fine. I did like it. It has some kind of like moments that kind of make me raise my eyebrows, some moments that I like, but I will say that compared to the Jurassic World movies, this is probably one of the best dinosaur movies I have seen for a while. Not exactly kind of like the best, or something that it could make my top 10 best movies of the year. Not kind of close, but it did deliver in a lot of good things. For once, I will say that it does deliver on dinosaur carnage. Although don't expect it more rated R scenes, except for one moment that really felt that it could be a little bit of rated R. But it does bring what we're expecting. Dinosaur carnage on a suburban life. This is kind of surprising me because this is basically the same thing what the Ice Cream Man was doing the last time, but still people kind of hated it because I didn't expect too much about the Ice Cream Man. It was just a dumb movie made by Eli Roth, but I like it fine. I like it. It's maybe because it was a little bit more visceral compared to this one. Maybe the end of Oak Street could have pushed some things a little bit better to make it kind of more memorable. But what do you expect? This is it is one of those movies that it delivers the carnage, it delivers what it promised. Although there's some holes here and there, but at the end of the day, you can come up kind of like satisfied for what it is. It's just it is in ways I can't say if it's either a sci-fi movie or a horror movie because it wants to handle kind of like both things. And I will say at once that there are times that for the span of the movie that it gets. Sometimes it gets a little bit tone deaf here and there. Well, I don't mind, tone deaf, tonal shifting, once in a while. Although a little bit, not too much in your nose could have been a lot better. So I'll try to make this vlog a little bit faster because I don't think I have too much to say except for a few moments. Because the movie. The movie it starts out with the family that we have Anne Hathaway at the mother and Ewan McGregor at the father, and they play kind of like this family that they're technically likable, doing what they can, but there is some dysfunctionality, especially between the mother and the father, in which. Let's say that both of them have kind of like their own ways to support the family or what they want to expect them from everyone, but neither of them they do a good job on communicating each other, and they live in this quiet place on Oak Street. The nice neighbors and all this stuff. That is until some kind of anomaly that comes kind of like a flash or something like that, in which it kind of looks like the bright lights when you see the DeLorean going back in time from Back to the Future a little bit. But this anomaly somehow it managed to pick the whole town. It basically transports them back in time to prehistoric times where dinosaurs live, and of course that suburban life and prehistoric jungles is not exactly compatible. So dinosaurs run amok, eating everyone, and it is now for our family trying to survive. That is until they find out kind of like a way to probably get out of this whole situation. And yeah, in a way, it really sounds a really bleak story. And this is basically kind of like a Twilight Zone episode that a lot of things can go wrong. For starters, of course, dinosaurs are no matter how you look at them, they're still a threat. They are vicious. They're vicious. They cannot be reasoned. They just there for the hunt at anything what they see. And boy, that it delivers. By the way, And the movie does and the movie does a good job with that. On the first few minutes, they make the setup saying that okay, things are going good until something's bad is gonna happen, and it lingers a little bit because the pieces put themselves little by little until finally it explodes. And well, it does keep on a little bit of a mystery, saying that how in the world that happened. The funny thing is that in my head, because I had again the monster lived on Maple Street kind of vibe I had. I thought that everything was gonna be aliens, but no, it wasn't alien. It's kind of like a very sci-fi quantum physics anomaly in which apparently when I don't know, I'll make this up by the way because it's even hard to explain. That apparently in a quantum leap Doctor Who logic, apparently when the planets align, apparently there's kind of like this temporal time space rift that happens somewhere at random on Earth, and then this anomaly kind of swallows whatever space in it into making them travel through time. So apparently they've kind of made it kind of like a switcheroo from the place and the dinosaurs, and now the dinosaurs roam around, and apparently the movie kind of also gives itself kind of like a solution by saying that there's also some kind of time rift that kind of looked like one of those what was it, Stargate, something like that, in which it also has to do with time. I know that I'm sounding convoluted, but this is kind of like the convolution that the movie tries to explain why the anomaly happened, although the movie itself doesn't try to over-explain everything. And it was like, you know what? Let's go for it. Well, you don't need to know much about it. That's just kind of like the backbone of an explanation of what is happening. Because the major focus of the movie is survival. It's humans trapped in a town full of dinosaurs, and we get the characters who, well, they're not kind of like the most deep, but they are serviceable enough to kind of like advance the story. Like Ewan McGregor, he plays the father who he goes through a lot of odd jobs. Most recently, of course, being a pizza delivery guy, and he tries to be kind of like the support of the family, making the money out of it. But unfortunately, he also gets a little bit ashamed of that he doesn't want to tell it to his wife. Again, Anne Hathaway also tries to be kind of like the Marge Simpson of the family, in which she tries to do a lot of the things about the house, but at the same time, she wants to be a writer. But she doesn't. But of course, there are things that she and her husband, they don't communicate those things very well, and they are kind of fighting almost to the brink of divorce. Let's say that it kind of also affects the children, in which they don't like to see them fight, and they're kind of like, I don't know what to do with this and all this stuff. The children also, they're fine, and they're not. Although they're not kind of like the 8-year-old or something like that. The two of them are kind of like teenagers. This kind of makes kind of the whole movie watching experience a little bit more tolerable in a way, because if the movie kind of had kind of like for example an 8-year-old child or a 5-year-old child, I can see this movie having kind of like these moments saying, "Mommy, what is going on? Oh, Mommy, what is going on?" and something like that. All these pudgy tones that they always try to tries so hard to make the little kid kind look cute, and you will know that these kids, that little children, are automatically gonna be are gonna be, you know, they're gonna survive unless you are in a movie named Feast. But still, we got the elder sister who. The elder sister who also tries to act like, like the big sister, and then there is the teenage kid who he's a little bit. Let's say that this kid, I wish they could make a little bit more about this, because he shows that he's a pro on archery, and even though he has his social circle, he also has a close bond with his dog, and the dog technically disappears during the majority of the movie, although he comes out here and there. But you can tell that the kid is kind of have this big friendship over the dog. Although in a way, I just want to pat on the shoulder to the kid and say, "Don't worry, the dog is gonna be famous because the name of the dog is Starbucks." Don't worry, kid. The dog is gonna be named after a famous coffee shop. That's pretty much kind of like all the main characters. There's also kind of like this girl that the kid can get a little bit infatuated. Although this kind of like this neighbor girl, she doesn't contribute too much into the movie. It's almost like this character, you could easily remove this character out of the movie, and it won't affect too much. So I will say that kind of like this neighbor character is not exactly kind of like the strongest character, I'll say. And considering that there are other secondary characters that they show up, but they're mostly kind of there for the meat grinder, like the elderly neighbor who is the one who first finds the prehistoric flower on the garden, or the librarian, or the mean neighbor who's the mean neighbor who doesn't like the family's dog, and he is and there's also the kids' friends, which for some reason in my head, I thought the four that kind of remind me of Peter and their friends when from Family Guy when they're younger. It was something kind of like a stupid thing from my head. Or the bullies, the bully, because one of the bullies wants to have revenge on the kid, saying that you broke my brother's arm, I'm gonna beat you. And that thing is almost never addressed, except to bring out some level of danger that it almost brings nowhere. So honestly, I will say that while we get a nice thing with the primary characters, the secondary characters are kind of one of the weakest elements of this movie. I shouldn't get bothered too much, but doesn't feel like it enriches too much. It's just kind of like there just for letting things happen and to move that plot along. That's technically the whole thing. Although I do like that there was a kind of like a family dynamic, on the family mostly. Although there comes kind of like a moment in which I did kind of predict that what was going on, but this is mostly because there are some plot armors that the movie doesn't want to take too much of a risk. I will say. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but let's say that it's something that I wish they could have done more in Migration without doing a different twist. Yeah, if you don't remember Migration, the movie with the ducks. I'm not gonna go too much into detail, but there's one thing that I wish they could have done to make the movie better. But that's me just being sadistic. And this is where I go mostly in the cinematography moment where this is where I do have kind of like a mixed bag, but for the most part, it is shot well. It is well shot, and the dinosaurs themselves, of course, they it really looks like they did their research, like I said at the beginning, to sometimes make it look as accurate as it is from modern science on dinosaurs. Like for example, we don't have the Jurassic Park raptors. Instead, we got the kind of like the feather one with the black feathers, and they're still as vicious as there is. I even asked this friend, how accurate some of the dinosaurs is, and he said that some they look good. The raptors are one. There's another one that looks good. Although you could tell that there are some moments in which the CGI is kind of noticeable from one moment to another. But the funny thing is that I kind of noticed a little bit of the fake CGI, not on the dinosaurs, but on the dog. There is a moment in which I did notice the CGI on the dog. That's pretty much. But maybe it's just me. I just kind of noticed that. Another a little bit of a nitpick that I have with the movie is that while I do understand that this movie does have kind of like a story that easily could be a horror movie, because there's some violent stuff that happened into the movie, and not as violent as Ice Cream Man, but let's say that they wanted to keep it more kind of like a PG-13 violent, but still upping up the ante on a satisfying level. I mean, you get to see people, getting dragged, bloody carcasses here and there, and I will say that I really like the atmosphere. That it's not a pretty atmosphere. That when they go around, and sometimes there are places that it's silent, but you still see bodies just on the floor, mangled, or sometimes on far away you see other people or other family just running away from the dinosaurs, and we just follow along there. That's kind of like the good thing. Although they pushed down a little bit too much, because they just wanted to keep it a little bit more like Jurassic Park level violence, not like the book of Jurassic Park. I mean, if you read the Jurassic Park novel, it's a little bit more visceral. I mean, in the novel, they eat up a newborn, and what was it? The traitor guy, Newton. I forgot the one who in the movies was played by Wayne Knight. Let's say that his death was much more visceral, So I was technically saying that this could easily kind of be a horror movie, but there are times in which the tone can get a little bit off place, because sometimes the music plays a little bit too whimsical, that it does feel a little that the music is kind of like it's been played by Danny Elfman for some reason in some moments. Or there are moments in which they try to give a little bit of humor, although there's kind of like I don't feel like it's kind of like the most laugh out loud comedy. There's some people who kind of laugh out, and speaking of things that I wish it could be R-rated, although they didn't want it to do, maybe I will say that there is a moment in which it could easily be R-rated, but I don't know, probably because 13-year-old can handle this thing. Man, we will grow up. You know what? I'll say it, because there comes a moment in which they stumble with two brontosauruses having sex. I am not kidding. I am not kidding. That there comes a moment in which they wanted to play kind of like this beautiful moment, but the collision of that moment is when they stumble on two brontosaurus having sex. And by the way, never know. I don't know if recent studies show that they had hair, but there was, and they decided to take a picture of it. And in my head, it's like, congratulations, you officially took the photo of the first dinosaur porn. I was in my head. It was like, really. Some people will find it funny. I can see it funny, kind of like in odd ways, but for a movie that is about that came from people being mangled by dinosaurs. It was something like that. I think the tone wasn't too settled on that, and sometimes again the music doesn't help out too much on the the tonal shifts that this movie had. You know what? I'm even trying to remember some of the other things that I want to talk about the movie's pros and cons, but for some reason it just got blank, and it just got blank now that I'm talking about it, because I don't know. Probably the two brontosaurus have during their mating ritual kind of erased that moment. Oh, I forgot, because the thing is that there is one moment in which that one legitimately scared me, and that is because of my phobia and the way it was executed. And that's what I'm saying, that this movie kind of made me curious what will have happened. Instead of making kind of like a Steven Spielberg kind of type of movie, they decided to make it more horror. And that moment, it involved a big, giant albino snake. That snake is gonna give me nightmares. Even the scene involved with it and the way it moves, it reminded me why I fear snakes. I despise snakes, and that moment didn't help out. Especially when it kind of takes the limelight. And by the way, my friend told me it's called a Titan boa. But that moment, the way it's moved and all the stuff, I will say that this is probably kind of the scariest thing I have ever seen in a movie. And I sat through Ice Cream Man, and I sat through Obsession, and it's incredible that when you nail something, it's gonna go with it. But that snake, that is probably the scariest thing I have seen, and this is kind of, and even the CGI that they made with the snake is really effective. That was a really good effect, but it doesn't take out the fact that, my God, that was so scary. I was so scared of that snake that that was probably the most chilling part that I have with this movie. And well, I have nothing much to say. Also, that I did kind of like the ending that it had, even though, let's say that the ending, while it does have some good things, it also causes a little bit of problems. I'm not gonna reveal what it is because I'm not gonna do one of those spoils, but let's say that the movie kind of shoots itself a little bit on the foot by bringing more questions than answers, I'll say. In a way, let's say that when you put kind of like a quantum physics between time travel and all this stuff, normally things get a little bit convoluted. It's like, well, let's say that it's like, well, potholes on the street. That's a quote from Silver the Hedgehog when he tries to explain the time anomalies and all this stuff. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the end of Oak Street. At the end of it's pretty serviceable, giving you with this the dinosaur carnage. I found it pretty solid. There are some faults here and there, but if you're a big fan of dinosaurs, I'm happy to say that this is a better alternative than the recent Jurassic World movies. Who knows? Probably in the future, we're probably gonna get better dinosaur movies, and I can't wait for this because at the end of the day, I still love my dinosaurs. Except that giant snake. Yeesh.